we'll be a little bit cautious with Powell in camp. He'll do contact, but he'll do controlled contact to start. Then he'll start probably by next week. He'll go full bore as long as the load, he responds to the load well, and then we expect him to be ready for opening night, which is good news. He's ahead of where we thought he would have been based on the surgical timeline. So, but everybody else ready to go. Talk to him about that. This is a guy we were playing pickup the other day, and he was only supposed to play every other game until he found out we were keeping track of wins and losses and played every game. So, look, I don't want to sound old school, but Dame's a first ballot. He's an all-NBA player. He only plays 35, 36 minutes a game. He's not playing 40 minutes a night. So, that's a conversation we'll get into when we see how the season is going. But, season 8, he's 29 years old. He's not 40. So, but look, Dame does a really good job of managing his body in the off season. He does a really good job of letting the guys know, getting his treatment, getting his work in. I do think with the veteran team we have, practices are not going to be as arduous, as they were when we were a little bit younger. I think Terry, it's a question for Terry, but I think you'll see a transition there in terms of how much load really is going on in practice. I think it's the deepest, most talented, most experienced team we've had since we've been here. We've been top heavier at times. Look, clearly when Nurk gets back, it's the biggest team we've had. I like the fact that we brought in guys like Powell with championship pedigree, that have been to where we're trying to get to. And I think, coming off the heels of last year's run, is giving these guys a springboard. Instead of responding to a negative, finishing on a negative, a year ago, we finished really strong, and it's really inspired the guys. So I like that. I like that we've stayed true to the fact that all the guys that are here want to be here, which has been one of our defining principles is we want guys that want to be in Portland. So when you look at our roster, it's really based on player retention of our core pieces, the young guys we've drafted, and guys that are either were free agents or were guys we traded for that were anxious to come to Portland, which is critical for us in terms of our culture and how we approach things on and off the court with our guys. We have to have guys that buy into how we do things in Portland. It does. I think from a handling standpoint, we've got more guys that can handle the ball, more guys that can create shots for themselves and others. I do think, there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of positionless basketball we can get to. But I like the fact that we've stayed big from a power standpoint. I think we're still going to be an elite offensive rebounding team. We can play inside and out. We're not just going to be, attacking from outside in. So there's a lot of places for Terry to go with it, and he's got a lot of choices. I think there are 14 guys on the roster, and there are 14 guys that I don't know that Terry'd be afraid to put in a game if he needed to. Yeah, look, I think when we drafted him as a big, projected long term, as a 5. There's been guys with that kind of physical structure and physical profile that he has that I think started out probably better off at 4 that aged into 5s. We've had them here. The 3 guys that come to mind, 2 I can mention because they're retired, but guys like Jermaine and Rashid, in terms of being able to play either 4 or 5 depending on matchups. But Zach's got great feet, so he can move on the perimeter. He can switch pick and rolls. He can guard mobile guys. He's put on weight. He's gotten stronger, but it gives us the luxury of having centers that can bang like Nurk and Hassan and Powell, but also guys like Zach that can play quicker, more of a speed 5, mobile 5 that can kind of get up and down the floor and show more mobility with a second group depending on how the rotation works out. I think it is, but I think, when people talk about going small, that's off the bench. I think when you look around the league, teams start big. We start big, but I think we have the flexibility now to go small when we need to without giving up a lot. Instead of being reactive to what the other team is doing, it can be a choice for Terry But I do like the fact that, last year, we played power basketball. We played Ennis and we played Zach together. We were playing Zach and Nurk together at times, and that's why we're able to pound the glass, get second chance points. We defensive rebounded well, and we were able to play inside and out, which created more shooting. But look, I think we've got a better shooting team. We've got more playmaking. We've got better size. We're bigger across the front court. So we didn't go away from any of the things that made us successful a year ago. But I think we built upon those, upon those positions by staying true to wanting to be big in the post and mobile three-point shooters that can handle on the perimeter. Well, it's a testament to Terry and the assistant coaches and, Dame and CJ. But, I think we get guys at the right time. When you look at it, we chased Powell as a free agent. We chased Mario as a free agent. We chased Bays as a free agent. It wasn't the right time. But I think getting guys coming from situations where maybe they hadn't been as successful either individually or as a team as they had liked, over the last few years, I think getting them now coming into a team that was in the Western Conference Finals, where we've got great continuity in terms of our two best players, the GM, the business president, ownership, and head coach, I think it gives them a comfort level coming in too. So, one of the luxuries of sustainability and continuity in terms of front office and coaching staff and ownership is that you may miss the first time you go after guys, but the next time it comes back around, they know they're walking into a situation that they had evaluated previously, and this team and the leadership of the team has lived up to what we had pitched them in their meetings the last time. So, when we have another benchmark, we'll give it, and we're going to stay purposely vague at this point. He's in working out, he's shooting. We had guys with him all summer. He's tracking on the proper timeline, but like I said, I think what we're going to do, just so you guys know with Nurk, anytime there's a new benchmark, we will give it to you guys, but we're not going to have Nurk watch, 2019. So, yeah, we can move on. But he's been great. Logan and Jess basically spent the majority of the summer in Eastern Europe, splitting their time between Bosnia and Zagreb. We had someone with him basically constantly. He did a great job. He stayed with us through the middle of July. And then we had guys with him right up until Labor Day doing rehab with him. So he's in great shape. His weight is terrific. It's right where we would want him to be if he were playing. And now it's just a matter of increasing his load and hitting all of these thresholds and making sure we don't accelerate things and end up having a setback. That's the key. When he comes back, we want him to be ready to come back fully confident in the leg. Well, I give credit, to Adam, for taking a leadership position on it. It's clearly a very sensitive area. It's a moving target every year when you come and you try to address it. But, I think the optics were really bad this offseason with the number of deals that were kind of publicly revealed prior to June 30th. And I think the league stepped up and took a position against it. We're all going to have to be very diligent in terms of, casual conversations we may have had in the past that now would be considered a violation of the tampering rules and protocols. And, we're going to have to spend some time re-educating our staff on what's an appropriate general conversation versus what crosses the line.
We lost a lot of officials in the last few years. Mike Callahan has had one of the big. How do you feel about the quality of the officiating?
No, I think Byron does a great job in terms of, they've really done a great job with the league. I'm on the competition committee with Monty McCutcheon, on education. The G League has proven really effective in terms of developing officials. They've done a great job of sprinkling in NBA games, throughout the G League for guys that are tracking to becoming NBA officials. But, look, this summer, we're losing Duke, we're losing Jason Phillips, we just lost Ronnie Garrettson. Those guys are hard. Those are elite finals level officials. So it raises the bar, for the vets, that are still doing games. And it puts a lot of pressure on the younger guys. But I think as the game gets faster, more mobile, the athletes just keep getting more explosive. We need to start bringing in younger, more athletic officials that can keep up with the pace of the game. And and that's Terry's cross to bear, not mine. I was just watching there was something on Twitter. I don't know if it was baseball or was it Clint Hurdle? Somebody talking about emphasizing giving guys the freedom to become great, right? Instead of coaching what they don't do well. And I think, one of Terry's gifts is he's far more patient than I am in allowing guys to play through mistakes and allowing guys to build their own confidence. I mean, I think that's why you see, an uptick in shooting percentages because, Terry empowers guys, as long as they're working on things, to use them in games. I mean, there isn't a double standard. He's not asking guys to put in extra work and then forbidding them, from taking shots in games. And I think that kind of an empowering environment gives guys confidence. And I think, guys play better when they play with freedom. They play better when they're confident, when they're being told what they should do and what they're allowed to do versus what they're not allowed to do. So I think that it's really, Terry's really fostered an environment of, living up to your potential and being able to experiment on the court and live through some bumps and bruises. So, look, it can be frustrating at times. I mean, there's certainly times where there's people making questions about, is that the best shot for this guy or that guy? And, do you adjudicate and control shot selection? But I think over the last 7 years, the track record of guys coming in here having big years is probably unparalleled across the league. I mean, Terry should go retire right now if he was getting a percentage of the guys that got contract year payments that were far above what anybody expected the market to be. So, and those guys, owe a debt of gratitude to having a coach at a time in their careers when it was about empowerment. It was about staying positive the whole time. And that's why I think you see guys, and back to AJ's question, I think, you see guys coming in, it doesn't matter if it's a contract year, they buy into how we play, how we do things, and they've seen the results of the guys that have come through at various points in their careers and excelled. And then whether they stayed here and were compensated or moved elsewhere, they were the beneficiaries of our culture and style of play. Scary, isn't it? Well, I think, because I hired Terry. Terry was a target of that search from day one. He had to navigate multiple obstacles, in terms of other people that weren't as familiar with his work and his ability to be an elite level head coach. But, to Paul's credit, again, Paul was patient with it early. It wasn't a Paul type hire, right? Paul is usually more about a splash. And this was absolutely a substance over flash type hire. And, I think we've grown together. I mean, Terry and I are really good counterparts. We run at different paces. How we do things, we do things differently, but we have a tremendous amount of respect for each other's jobs. I don't think for 1 minute, even though I coached in the league, that I could do what Terry does. And I think the same holds true for what my staff and I do. So I think that general respect, that there's never a line being crossed where one is invading the other person's area of expertise. And we are a team. And I think it's really important that our players never see us fracture. We talk all the time, Steve Rosenberry, our assistant GM, hearkening back to their days in Seattle. Agree, disagree, align. And that's where we are. I mean, when Terry and I have conversations where we have differing opinions, we have them in private. It never filters into the team. Our players are never aware of it. And then we come out and we present a united front. So I think, after 7 years, what we realize is this sends a strong message out in the marketplace. I think agents realize, when you get into buyout markets, when you get into free agency and trades, we're becoming the place we had wanted to be 7 years ago, which was a place agents would feel comfortable placing their clients, a place draft picks could develop, a place free agents that are prioritizing, basketball is their priority over the superficiality of certain markets. that this is where they would want to be. And I think it starts with Terry and I, and if we can't be on the same page, how can we ask players to come in contract years and make sacrifices for the good of the team if we're not willing to do it and show a leadership on that front just when it comes to coaching and front office?
And what about the communication really over the offseason? How much communication and the ownership piece still stayed?
It's fantastic. She was just at the Board of Governors, was unanimously approved. Jody's been engaged the entire time. I can tell you we wouldn't be facing a $20 million luxury tax bill if she wasn't. So, you know, look, Jody got a taste of it last year. She wants to win. Her response to Adam when asked about what your goals for the franchise were was to win a couple of championships. So, you know, she sets a very high bar. The challenge for all of us now is her benchmark and baseline is Western Conference Finals. So, you know, Jody's been a great leader. She pushes us every day, you know, to build this roster, but, you know, she also allows us to do our jobs. So I think it's been an interesting model. You know, Paul was probably more day-to-day, wanted to see how the sausage was made, really enjoyed the process of putting the team together. And for Jody, it's about establishing a plan, offering her the direction, giving her, you know, the criteria that we're going to follow, and her approving that plan and allowing us to go do our job. So I think you guys will see more of a presence from her this year in the regular season. Out of respect last year, you know, she wasn't really around as much until the playoffs, even though we communicated very consistently. But she has been a phenomenal leader for both us and the Seahawks. And I don't think we're in the Western Conference Finals last year without her support. I mean, she's the one that signed off on adding money in the Rodney Hood trade, giving up draft picks to do it. She's the one that signed off on adding Ennis Cantor through the buyout market, even though we're already a tax team, knowing it would make us better. And that's the kind of leadership that allows us to do our jobs and perform and give us the confidence to know that we're being held to a very high standard, but we're going to continue to get the resources we're accustomed to. You know, Terry can speak to it. I think he made some changes in terms of defensive responsibilities on the coaching staff. Look, I think our team's better. We were in the Western Conference Finals and got better this offseason. But so did Houston, so did the Clippers, so did the Lakers, so did Houston. You know, all the way down. I mean, there are just no nights off in the Western Conference. I mean, this isn't wiffle ball out here. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, you know, you start looking at, you know, teams that even teams that were elite last year that stayed status quo. I mean, if you're not getting better, you're falling behind out here. So, but, you know, we talk about this every year. That's the arms race out here. I mean, you know, one of the positives from a professional standpoint is whether it's coaching or front office, every year there are teams raising the bar for what you needed to do to compete out here. And, you know, we've stayed with continuity, and this year we knew we needed to make a jump. We made some changes. And, you know, other teams made big ads, and that's just life out here. This is the way it's going to be in the Western Conference. You know, we compete every year, Jason, with destination markets. When you look at duos around the league, in destination markets, almost exclusively, those players were added by free agency or forced trades. And in our conference, the teams that are the elite small market teams, their best players had to be drafted or were acquired with draft-related assets. So from a team-building standpoint, we're really working with two different models out here, and we don't have the margin for error other people do. The small markets in the West have to nail drafts and retain their best players. Yeah, look, I think all the individual defense stuff's overrated. I really do. With the league rules today, in terms of physicality on the perimeter, touching, freedom of movement, I think you defend as a team. And I think, you know, what we maybe don't have the elite size, you know, on the wings, but we have elite size in our front court and rim protection, and we have mobility, and we have IQ, and we have depth. So, you know, I don't know that the question marks didn't exist last year. I think we were smaller in the front court and bigger on the wing. So, you know, look, if we were above average at each position, you know, they'd be touting us as, you know, the team that's supposed to win a championship. So, like I said, I think we're going to do it as a group. We always have. And like I said, when Terry comes up, he can speak to, changes they've made in terms of, who's going to be handling and leading the defensive efforts. I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Right. Well, I think the tax situation, that we have an ability to bring some guys up without it hitting our cap number was big. We liked some guys in the second round of the draft this year, but we knew we only wanted to carry 14. We had plans for those spots. So we basically targeted some guys we felt slipped through the cracks in the draft. Jalen was a guy we committed to early. We thought he was definitely a second-round talent that we were able to grab on a two-way. We have the luxury of them being up with us for a number of days, and then see how they develop in the league. We're going to have a lot of turnover on our roster next summer potentially, and it gets a guy who potentially we thought could have been a second-round pick into the fold without having to convey the pick, right, or have him hit the cap. We're still open to the guys that are in camp or other players filling the other two-way spot as well. Some guys have stood out in early season workouts, so we'll continue to monitor through camp. And look, it's a great tool. It's a great way to get guys into the mix, into our culture, see if they fit in, see if their skill sets are something that can complement the guys on the roster. And, look, we were in a situation last year with Rodney where we traded 2 seconds to get Rodney. So in order to balance out the roster with having the backflow of young players, they're developing in the pipeline, we need to use every tool at our disposal. So the two-way is one of those tools. We've looked at it. We're still looking through the logistics of where we would put it, how we would maximize it. For me, it's really important that it's in market. I don't want to lose touch with the fact that we have probably one of the best records of player development in the league. Most of our young guys wouldn't be where they are if they weren't with our coaching staff every day, surrounded by guys like Dame and CJ. So I don't want to lose that. So I think it's really critical that if we get a team, it's in market, guys can continue to practice with us, use our nutritionists, use all the resources, the practice facilities, be shown a pathway to being a pro for guys that are our veteran players, and then go play in the game environments. So I don't think we're at any kind of competitive disadvantage not having a team at this point. We're still monitoring it. We've got to find a way to make sure that it doesn't become a black hole in terms of financial resources that just doesn't pencil out. And like I said, the way that the league is structured right now, we have the luxury of placing guys with good teams. We're able to select which teams they go to based on role, minute availability, and style of play. So it's something we continue to monitor. We continue to discuss with the league. But, there are business elements to it that have to just realistically, we've got to be able to execute in a way where it doesn't become, an albatross in terms of the financial resources going into that, where they could be going into the big club's money. Just watching them play every day. Back to this question, again, he wouldn't be there if he hadn't been with Dame and CJ all year, watching how they work, how they approach things. If he hadn't been with our coaching and our development staff, he's done a great job. He's grown an inch since we drafted him. He's put on 10 pounds. He's longer. His handle's tighter. I think you guys all saw at the end of the season and then saw in Summer League. He's really gifted. He really is. He fits that model. We always like to have that third guard that can play either position, that can play with Dame or CJ. What's unique about it this year is we also have Bays. So it's not in a vacuum, just that triangle of 3 guys where we've had, with Baz, with Seth, with Steve Blake, that role, that Mo Williams role. Because we do have Bays, who's been really elite in all of our September workouts. But there's an opportunity there for him, and he's going to have to deliver, when he gets the opportunity. But in terms of just his natural gifts, he's as gifted a basketball player as anyone I've drafted in my 15 years in the league. Well, we had obviously he was, he had blown up at the Nike Hoop Summit. We were really impressed with him there. We tracked him. He played out of position a lot of the time at Wake because he was the biggest guy on the roster. So I think guys lost sight of him for a little bit. He had a couple of injuries during the pre-draft process, or I think he probably does get drafted based on his size and skill. But we liked his ability. He's got great size on the wing. He's a handling wing. His shot is a work in progress, but it gives us an entire year to work with him on that. And I think he's got a physical profile that you just can't find in a big playmaking wing when they're operating at 100%. So, on draft night, we had a list of guys that we thought if they had a chance to get drafted, we wanted to start tracking right away. And, we've seen it. He's been really good in our workouts. And again, back to the G League point is he has the luxury every day of playing against Rodney Hood and Kent Bazemore and Mario Hezonja. And so that's something you just can't replicate in the G League. It's really hard to compete against that level of competition every day for your growth and development that you get every day in the practice facility. So he's been terrific so far. It's a futures play for us. He's clearly not going to contribute this year. But if we can get him into our program and he proves that he's going to translate long term, then we can follow the same kind of protocols we followed with Wade Baldwin, where we had them at the end of the year and, potentially get him into the mix long term. Yeah, look, it's one of the luxuries we have of the guys coming back, early in September, that they're in there playing pickup and, working out. So you do get to see guys, prior to opening up for camp and get a better feel. So it's not the old days where guys just showed up and you kind of had to figure it out in camp. So, Baze has been terrific. Mario Hezonja, I think, has opened a lot of eyes. He plays with thrust, gets the ball up and down the floor. He's got great size. He can handle it, can make plays. He plays with tempo. Guys have really enjoyed playing with him. I always like to see how the veteran players and Dame and CJ and those guys respond to the new players, and they've really embraced his skill set and what he can bring to the table. They've empowered him to have the ball in his hands more, and Hassan's been a monster. He's been here. He was one of the vets that came back as early as anybody. His rim protection is elite. He's got great hands. He finishes in the lane, block shots, rebound, runs the floor. He's already developing a really nice chemistry with Dame and CJ in terms of, their mid-pick and rolls and finding out where his scoring opportunities are in our offense. And look, he covers up for a lot of mistakes. He just covers a lot of ground in the lane. He's really long. He's got a great feel for getting to shots late. And I think our coverages are really going to allow him to excel defensively at a level we saw a few years ago. And his confidence, no different than when we added Nurk, where there is a very specific role. He's the starter. The minutes are there. He's not looking over his shoulder. He can play with confidence. And this is probably the best, I would say, the best roster he's played with in terms of perimeter players and the ability to get him the basketball in his scoring zones that he's played with since he's made this comeback from back when he was playing overseas. Look, this isn't unique. When you look at the big guys that have come through, we've got, I think, the best backcourt in the NBA. I think we've had the best young guard in the NBA in Anthony. So there's a lot of guys out there that attract a lot of attention. And if you play the right way, if you play in Terry's system, if you know when to roll, if you're a willing screener to crack those guys open, they are going to be the focal point of opposing defenses, which gives you a lot of opportunity. It's why we added a lot of shooting this offseason to keep that floor spaced. And it's a quid pro quo with those guys. You do a great job screening, they'll get you the ball. If you get them open for looks that otherwise they would have to create off the dribble on their own, then they'll get you the basketball. We need to get the basketball. Dame said it the other day with Hassan. He's going to get the ball enough in areas he's really comfortable, where he's going to be fine with the amount of touches he gets within our offense. Don't tell Mace that. I do. I think for all of our guards. I think it's really unique. I think it's introduced a new creativity to them in how they deliver the ball. Because like you said, it's mostly been, bounce passes, shovel passes. We haven't had the guy where you just throw it up in the vicinity to the rim and they can go get it. So I think for all of our guards, it's opened up an ability to get the ball to guys in areas where before that just wasn't an opportunity, right? And it resulted in more floaters, runners in the lane where guys stayed with the big, or they just didn't have the passing lanes to get it to them. So it's been fun to watch just all the guys, and I throw Mario into that category and Baze as well. They're both really good passers and get the ball to guys late that also attract attention offensively. So I think that this is going to be really unique. I think we're going to see plays that we haven't seen much before in the random flow of our offense. Thanks, guys.